The Top Floor Please podcast, where women in leadership rise together. I'm your host, Melissa McCormick, executive coach and founder of the Grace and Salt Leadership Academy. This is your space to find clarity, grow in confidence, and lead with bold authenticity. Whether you're navigating the boardroom, building your team, or stepping into new territory, you're not alone. Let's talk real challenges, real growth, and real leadership because the top floor isn't just a place, it's a mindset. Alrighty then, let's get started. All right. Big question as we start today. What separates leaders who stay stuck in management from leaders who rise into executive influence? So let me say that again. What separates leaders who stay stuck in management from those leaders who rise into executive influence? What do you think? Just let me know. What do you think? Just think about that. Write it down. Hopefully you've got your Grace and Salt journal. Is it intelligence? Not always. Is it experience? Not always. Is it just plain work ethic? Certainly not. It's how they think. Strategic leaders think differently. They don't focus on today's fires. They don't focus on immediate deadlines. They don't focus on team tasks or operational noise. They think bigger. Okay, you notice what I said there? They don't focus on today's fires. They don't focus on immediate deadlines. They don't focus on team tasks and what do we have to accomplish today or this week. They think bigger. They think bigger. These are questions that they ask. What's the long-term impact? How does this decision affect the broader organization? What risks are we not seeing? And where are we spending time that no longer serves growth? Okay, do you see the difference? This shift from task-based thinking to strategic thinking, that's what moves leaders from being dependable managers to trusted executives. And that's what we're going to unpack today. We're going to unpack how strategic leaders think differently and why this mindset shift may be one of the most important moves in your career. Welcome to Top Floor Please podcast. This is the podcast for leaders who are ready to stop drowning in the day-to-day. You want to get out of the weeds. You want to start leading with greater clarity, confidence, and strategic influence. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Melissa McCormick. And I always wanted to be a lawyer back in the day, but instead of that courtroom, I traded it for the boardroom. And so now I help leaders stop arguing with their calendars. I help them think more strategically and start running the business instead of the business running them. So today, we're going to be talking about one of the defining differences between leadership levels, and that's strategic thinking. Management thinking versus strategic thinking. What is that? Like managers, they often focus on execution. They focus on deadlines. They focus on deliverables, efficiency, immediate outcomes. That doesn't sound bad, right? I mean, you're thinking, Melissa, what are you talking about? Of course they do. Those are important things. Yes, they are. But strategic leaders, they expand beyond execution. They're also focusing on sustainability, enterprise impact, organizational alignment, cross-functional implications, future positioning. They don't ask, how do we get this done? They ask, should we be doing this at all? Catch that? They don't ask, how do we get this done? They say, should we be doing this at all? Does it align with our greater mission? Now, many times leaders stay in the weeds, right? Stay in that day-to-day because high-performing leaders are promoted because they execute well. Okay, so you've seen this happen, I'm sure, a million times, where you've got a great salesperson and then they get promoted to sales manager, and a year later they're back to salesperson. Yeah, that's true. They performed super well, so they got promoted, but then they stay trapped there, right? That's where they stay. They didn't continue. And so they either go back or they just, like my story that I shared with you previous podcast, you stay just kind of circling. Like, you're an airplane, you're just circling. They stay trapped there because they continue to solve every problem, to manage every detail, to over-own execution, avoid delegation, prioritize productivity over perspective. Eventually, their strength becomes their ceiling. Executive leadership often requires more perspective, less task saturation. And when you get there, so this will have to be its own podcast, but when you get to executive into that role, then you have an identity crisis because you're like, wait a minute, what do I do? Nobody told me what I do. So you start still doing the things that you used to do when you had the old position. And then your team is really confused. So hold that thought, because that's going to be another podcast. Strategic leaders think enterprise-wide. Here's what they consider. The first thing, I want you to write this down: organizational ripple effects. How decisions impact other departments. So it's not just silo, right? We're not just talking about silos. They think about, how is this going to impact the overall organization, including other departments and not just their own. Number two is resource allocation. Where is the time, energy, and talent spent best? Where should we be spending our time, our energy, and our talent so that we get the best bang for our buck, quite frankly? Risk. Short-term wins can create a long-term consequence. How do we evaluate the risk? A decision that I make today, how does that then translate into precedent setting? How does that translate into overall enterprise risk, not just risk from the day? Prioritization. Not everything deserves equal attention. Prioritization is critical. If you don't hear anything that I'm saying here today, hear that. Learn how to prioritize. And finally, leadership development. Who else needs to grow, and how do I get them there? Who needs to grow, and how do I get them there? We're going to take just a little bit of a test right now. So just kind of, and you don't have to tell me, but one of the clearest signs of a leadership level is often the calendar. So here's the thing. If every hour is consumed by tactical tasks, constant meetings, firefighting, operational troubleshooting, then you don't have a lot of room. You don't have a lot of room for that strategic thought. You don't have a lot of room for visionary stuff. You don't have team development time. You don't have enterprise planning time. And leaders that are buried in the weeds, they often struggle to rise above them, because strategy requires space. Many, many, many years ago, I was fortunate enough to go to a leadership program at Darden School of Business at the University of Virginia in Charlottesville. Amazing. If you ever get a chance to go to Charlottesville, you should go. But the UVA has become, I didn't go there, but I love the college. But I was at the Darden School of Business for a 2-week program, and one of the professors talked about firehouse time, and she talked about firefighters and how they're trained and how off time they practice strategically what happens during the crisis, so that when there is a crisis, they know how to respond. And her message was this. Her message was, put firehouse time on your calendar. Put it on your calendar. And it's a non-negotiable. So put it where it makes sense. Friday mornings, Friday afternoons, Monday afternoons, Wednesday afternoons, whatever it looks like, where you're not going to have to interrupt it. And spend that time strategically thinking about your own career, but also about those that you lead. That's what strategic leaders do differently. They protect their thinking time, or their firehouse time. They ask better questions. They lead with curiosity, and they delegate intentionally. Now, delegation, I have a whole course on delegation. Delegation, for me, it's kind of has a bad reputation, but it is a skill. And if doing it correctly with the right heart, is going to not only give yourself some time, but it's going to be a gift that you give to others, because they are going to grow because of the opportunity of completing something that you are not able to do. Okay. So check it out. If you're interested in delegation at all, check out my course. You can find it at graceandsaltleadership.com. Email me, whatever, and I will get you the link to it. But delegation intentionally. So when something comes on your desk and you go, this doesn't belong here, I am not going to do it. Who should do it? Who needs it? Who needs this knowledge that I need to transfer because it's going to make them stronger, right? It's delegating intentionally, not just delegating for the first person you think of. They also assess downstream impact. So if I'm making a decision, they're going to be thinking about, how is it going to handle things downstream? Like, how does this impact other people? And are our decisions aligned with the overall organization's goals? Okay, so I hope you wrote all that down. And if you didn't, rewind and write it down. So the one thing that I just really want to focus a little bit more time on is personal authority. So in my years in executive leadership, one of those greatest shifts wasn't simply learning how to lead people. It was learning how to think beyond my own desk. Okay. So I talked about that a little bit, where once you get into executive leadership, you're like, what am I supposed to do? Like I'm used to, working really fast and getting my to-do list and checking things off. And now I don't do that. Like my inbox, yeah, I've got a lot of emails, but I don't have the number that I used to have. So it's learning about how to own your desk and what your role is, because the higher you get in the organization, the more your decisions affect the broader systems, right? So you have to learn how to think about the whole organization. And leaders who consistently rise are often the ones who anticipate, they prioritize, they simplify, and they align. Okay, so I've got some very practical steps that I'm going to share with you to build your strategic thinking. So I need you to write these down. One, I want you to audit your time. Where are you too operational? Right now, you may be in a position that you have to be right now, but I want you to carve out some time, because if you don't, you will always be operational. Now, maybe you are an executive right now, but you feel like you're still in the weeds, or you feel like you come home and you're exhausted, and like firehouse time, I have no time for that. So I want you to audit your time. Where are you too operational? I then want you to ask yourself enterprise level questions. What is the broader impact? What is my broader impact for the organization? Number 3, I want you to strengthen your delegation. Free up some space for strategy. Okay, free it up. I want you to strengthen your delegation. I want you to, when something comes to your desk, I want you to delegate early and I want you to delegate often. But I don't want you to always delegate to the same person. We have that go-to person. If you've got my book, read about the go-to person. And you're going to know what I'm talking about. You've got that person you trust and you're just throwing things their way, which means that other people on your team are not growing. You're not paying attention to them. So I need you to delegate intentionally and strengthen your delegation. Number 4, build perspective. Look beyond your immediate wins. Develop leaders beneath you, right? Scale matters. It totally matters. So if you're just relying on your go-to person, then you're leaving out the rest. And that is not, well, it's not okay, first of all, but it's not good for you and it's not good for the organization. Okay, so 3 key takeaways for today. Strategic thinking separates your managers from your executives. So perspective expands your leadership. So strategic thinking separates your managers from your executives. 2, operational excellence alone is not enough. Remember that leadership growth requires broader thinking. Yes, you're good at your job. Yes, you're killing it, but it's not enough. Operational excellence alone is not enough. And finally, you must create space for strategy. Find your firehouse time. Buried leaders struggle to lead strategically. And then when you are buried, guess what? Then the bosses who can promote you are thinking, well, look, she's busy and she's stuck. So she's not strategically figuring out how to overcome all of the crap, quite frankly, that they're throwing your way. So they're going to look for somebody else. You don't want that. Yeah, you are not going to want that. So before we wrap today, I want you to ask one thing. Where am I spending too much time managing when I should be thinking more strategically? Like, where is that? Look at your calendar, do a time audit. Look at your calendar. If you want a time audit document, I will be more than happy to send it to you. So just DM me and say time management or time, and I will send you over a time management Excel spreadsheet that will be very simple and will help you with your time management to see where you're spending your time. Because a lot of times we don't know. We think we know, but once you do a time audit, you don't really know. And in fact, it's time for me to do a time audit right now with my own stuff because I need to find my firehouse time. I know I'm starting to get into this busy mode and I'm exhausted, and that's not a good place for me to be, and it's not a good place for me to serve my clients and serve who the good Lord has asked me to serve. So please remember that insight is so helpful. Leadership only changes when our behavior changes. I've been talking about that this entire series. And your next level, it may not require doing more, but it might require thinking bigger. It might require delegating better. It might require leading differently. It might require creating space for strategy. Okay. So now, if this resonates with you at all, I work with leaders who are buried in the day to day. I help them simplify things. I help them get out of the weeds. I help them start running the business instead of the business running them. That sounds like where you are. You can learn more about working with me at graceandsaltleadership.com. If this episode was helpful, I want you to share it with another leader who may be ready for this shift. And finally, please be sure to follow me or subscribe so you know you don't miss the next episode. All right, everyone. I thank you so much for your time, and you have a wonderful time and keep leading forward. Thanks so much for hanging out on the top floor. If today's episode gave you something to think about or a little boost, share it with your friends to keep the momentum going. And hey, if you're ready to rise, find your voice, and lead with clarity and confidence, we'd love to connect with you. Reach out at graceandsaltleadership.com to learn how Grace and Salt can support your growth. Remember, you don't have to lead like everyone else. Just lead like you. All right, I'll see you next time on the top floor.